God is immutable. God's not changing.
That's right. Yeah.
We are. And so the longer I live, the more wisdom I get, the more mature I get. I actually am probably a better parent now it's different in the stronghold household because we adopted children, but if you have naturally born children, logically, if you're growing in the Lord the way you should be, your justice for your youngest child will be the best. It should be, because you should be growing spiritually.
Yeah.
Your wisdom should be growing. Your walk with the Lord should be growing. And so what looks like grace and fairness and justice and immutability, all those things that God's building into us, looks best with the youngest. But with God, the way he treated Adam and Eve in the garden and the way he treats us today are the exact same. Mm-hmm. So have you guys ever given a gift that ended up being horrible? Like just the worst thing you've ever given in your entire life? Like,
Yep.
What was yours? What was yours?
Yeah, so there's a little context to it. The Christmas Liz and I got engaged a few days after Christmas.
Yes.
I had no money.
Good.
Because I spent it all on a ring.
Oh.
So Liz did not know that. She gave me the sweetest gift.
Were you in college still?
This was in, after college.
After college.
Yes. And I had no money, spent it all on a ring. She gave me this sweet gift with like pictures and super meaningful and like a scrapbook, and it was like super meaningful and then I gave her a picture of it was a picture about this big, and it was a close-up picture of my mustache.
Good.
Yep. Just an incredibly close-up picture of my mustache.
How'd that go over?
Went to Walmart at Christmas Eve, got it printed out, and put it on a nice canvas. It's still in my house. She will not hang it up.
Wow.
She was like,
she won't hang it up?
No.
Liz, hang it up.
It's like right above your bed.
Yeah.
That's where it should be.
Yeah.
I want it to be like
Put it in the
right by
bathroom.
the door when we walk outside, like Notre Dame hits the sign, you know?
Yeah, hit the
be a
stash on the
champion
way
today.
out.
Yeah.
Hit the leprechaun?
Yeah. It's like, bang.
There may be more there than you realize. She hasn't gotten rid of it either, so.
Yeah,
Ooh.
that's good.
She might actually like it.
So anyway, well, she was happy when we got engaged a few days later, but for the few days she was like, who is this guy and why am I so serious with him?
So to get it, just to be clear,
Yeah.
the only recovery from it was to propose.
That's correct.
Like,
Wait till
your
the next
options
gift I
were
give you.
find a new girlfriend or propose to this one.
Yeah. If you asked Liz this question, she would 100% say this answer. Didn't even ask her, but she would say this answer. Yep. Good question, Robert.
Wow. I think I have you maybe beat.
Okay.
What
First
gift did you give?
Valentine's Day with Hannah.
Yeah.
So, still in college. I don't have any money. I'm a romantic. You guys know this, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
That's how I
very
describe you to
thoughtful.
people.
Yeah. So
Touchy-feely.
I took Hannah to Walmart.
Oh, good. It's a good
To-
place. Good date.
I've told this story before.
That's where I
think
got my
on Sunday
gift.
morning. I took her to Walmart to the candy aisle.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll buy you anything that you want this morning. You just pick it out.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Man.
I really thought this was a great idea.
Men, get out your pen and paper.
In my brain, I thought,
Here it is.
This is she's going to get exactly what she wants.
Yeah. It's a win.
I'm with her.
Yeah.
It's chocolate, and I'm paying for it.
What can go better?
What could go wrong?
I mean,
How
he
did she
gave a
respond to
mustache
that?
photo.
Huh?
How did she respond to that?
She walked out of the store.
Did she? With another man, I hope.
No, with me trailing behind her with my tail tucked between my legs.
Slightly ungrateful a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I told her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I argued for a long time that was a great idea.
Yeah.
And
Did you
then
eventually
everyone
lose?
kept telling me that it wasn't a great idea.
It just depends on your perspective. If she was 10, it would have been great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
See, I got the age wrong.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Good.
Wow. I said it was buying for Tony instead of Hannah.
That's right.
It's my daughter instead of my future wife. If I followed it up, though, so Valentine's Day is 2 days before her birthday.
Yeah. Oh, the 16th.
So
we share birthdays.
You share a birthday. Yeah. You ruined her day.
I didn't get anything from you. Go ahead.
For Valentine's Day or for the birthday?
I mean, I'd be grateful to go in the candy aisle and choose whatever I want.
So I tried to fix it on her birthday.
Okay.
I thought, didn't get that right, So I'll get the birthday right.
Yeah.
Did you propose too?
No. So at church, they gave me a Valentine's gift. And it was this notepad with an apple on it
Yeah.
and like a little calendar thing. Like it looked like something that would be in your grandma's house in 1900.
Good.
Oh, it was a wax apple. So it was a wax apple,
Ooh.
a pen, and a notepad.
Apple of my eye.
And I regifted it to Hannah for her birthday.
No. Oh,
You are bad at this.
Oh goodness.
That's great.
Yeah, I got nothing that can top that. Like,
So
congratulations.
yeah, she had fits our topic today. She had a ton of grace for me because I was not good at it.
Oh my gosh. Well, Dwell, do you have anything to add to that at all?
I have somebody that does gifting for me. I have people for that. So my wife takes care of all the gifting. And
Dwell's smarter than I am.
I'm with you.
He delegates.
Brittany is so thoughtful with gifts, and I wish I had her ability to be so thoughtful with gifts, and she knocks it out of the park every time. So
Yeah, I've heard how gifts go at your house.
What does this mean?
We're on the topic. We might as well go there.
oh, let's go for it, baby.
Yeah,
What do you got?
How did gifting go on your birthday this last year? Brittany will testify that this is true.
did
You can
she
either
say?
tell the story true or I'll tell it true for
How
you.
about why don't you say it? I'll correct the.
So
the
I
parts
got a
that are wrong.
creamy, which is this thing that makes like
Ice cream.
Delicious ice
protein
cream.
shake type
Yeah.
things. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Healthy. I eat one every night.
Yeah.
It's got my protein powder and my peanut butter powder, some milk, and like a tablespoon of
Yeah.
honey or whatever, and then I put fruit in it. That's what I
Bulk in
yeah,
season.
That's right.
That's right.
Get that bulk on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I got one, and you wanted one.
Yeah.
And so you told Brittany every single day for a month that
Yeah.
you wanted one for your birthday.
Yeah. Subliminal messaging.
And then made her go buy you one before your birthday for your birthday.
Well, I mean, we were already at the store and they were on sale. Who knows if they're going to continue to be on sale? Sounds like that's a really smart.
Sign from the Lord.
I mean,
I'm just saying, I don't know that she's as good at giving a gift as you are at just like being relentless. That
well, I mean, why give me something I don't want? You know what I'm saying?
It's like
Well-
candy aisle.
Yeah, that's right. Like the candy aisle. Well, we're not in the candy aisle. We are at Freshwater, and this is the Unfiltered podcast, and we have a special guest with us today, Dwell. Hello, Dwell. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you? I mean, you have done a lot of things in your life and your career. Why don't you hit us with...
Tell us about your family.
that's
Well, I
a real
mean,
nice
start
way
there
of saying
first.
I'm an old guy.
No, you are so
Wow.
young.
Wow, way to
We have the same
grace.
barber. Like, I mean,
True story.
we're together.
The,
Hey.
Lord, the Lord is your barber. He took your hair away.
Easy, got
Yeah.
lights ahead of us, guys.
Genetics.
Yeah.
So-
Tell us a little about yourself.
So I went to College of the Ozarks. That's where I met my wife, and we got married 40 years ago. And
40 years. That's
40
awesome.
years.
Dwell.
We have 3 kids and 10 grandkids, and 8 of those are boys. And
Oh, my.
so for the last, I've been retired for a couple of years now, but before that I was a trooper for about 34 years. And 14 of those I did executive protection. And so I did protection for governors and senators and judges and people who need it, mostly the governors. And it was kind of a cool job. I got to travel the world and do a lot of very interesting things in a lot
Yeah.
of places. Prior to that, I worked the road as a road officer, and I had 2 years working undercover as an undercover officer as well.
Dang.
I didn't know that. On the
I mean,
undercover side.
I didn't know the undercover
Very
side.
cool.
Can't see me buying drugs. Huh?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Undercover Dwell.
It's the dwell not sticking out part that's hard for me to imagine.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So I remember one time working undercover, I had a goatee and I wore Harley shirts and I looked really rough. I can remember going into a convenience store and people left because I walked in. And
Oh, wow.
Like that, yeah, for a little while. Because you wanted to look kinda
Intimidating?
you had to fit the part.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, in all seriousness, do you think I could do that? You think I could pull that off?
Sure, you could buy drugs. Yeah,
Oh,
I can
okay.
believe that.
But not be intimidating.
I think the intimidating part
I think the part is, I was going for the intimidating part, but you went.
He's not
Yeah, you
answering
can buy
that.
drugs.
He could
No one's leaving the store when I'm walking in. That's what you're saying.
If you see Zach in a dark alley, would you be scared? Well, not necessarily.
That's not what I heard.
fit the part. That's good, Dwell.
Wow.
Like, oh, he's probably just buying drugs.
You just got such a good spirit, Zach. I don't know.
You're awesome. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, it's so good to be with you today. So, as a retired police officer, do you have any like police stories that you could share with us? I think everyone loves a good police story.
Oh gosh, I have so many. I think everybody that has been a police officer could probably write a book with their experiences.
Oh yeah,
Book that
can
no one would
imagine.
believe.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
That'd be they'd go, that didn't really happen.
yeah,
It's like,
Yeah, it
it did.
yeah. I don't know. The one that my grandkids like the best has nothing to do with grace, but I went to work and I had a stomach flu, and I was really sick. And it was a situation where if you don't go to work, then somebody's got to come in on a day off or a vacation day. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to sit at the office and hope I don't get any calls. Because normally you're very proactive, but you can also be reactive on occasion. And so I got a call about a guy that wasn't driving very well, and I got in behind him, and sure enough, he wasn't. And I got him stopped, and turns out he was a criminal, had drugs on him. And so I was trying to get some handcuffs on him and get the drugs, because they were in his car and in his pocket.
Yeah.
He decided that he was going to fight with me.
Oh.
And so any other day, fine. But that day I was so sick, and so we got in a fighting match, and he was on the ground and I was on the ground, and I was winning the fight. I was on top of him, but every time I would try to get a handcuff on him, he'd start fighting again. And that went on for probably 10 or 15 minutes, a long time. I got so tired, and I started throwing up because I had that stomach virus.
Oh no! So you're throwing up on him.
But I was still winning the fight because I had a lot of wrestling background, some other stuff. And finally, I said, "Look, I've got the flu. You're going to get sick, by the way. You're going to get the flu. There's no way you're going to avoid that." I said, "But I'm done fighting with you. I'm going to shoot you if you don't surrender." I said, "I'm on top. I could do that. I'm justified." I said, "Put your hands behind your back, or I'm going to shoot you because I'm done."
Yeah.
And he did.
Oh.
So,
yeah.
and my grandkids love that story, I think, because I think they can visualize me throwing up on this guy with the stomach virus. And
Opa don't mess around.
Opa. Oh man, that's exactly what we needed.
Man.
That's a great story.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
That was grace.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have stopped fighting immediately as soon as you start throwing up on me. I'm like, wherever you want me to go, like I'll go. Like
I think that actually transitions really well into our. So we're gonna talk about grace today.
Yep.
We're gonna kind of touch on the theological, really kind of see how this works out in the practical level. And the first thing we're going to look at today is common grace, which I think is exactly probably what was just extended to that guy. Dwell, you had a definition for common grace that it's grace that relates to the temporal concerns only, all people sharing in grace from God, the saved and the sanctified and the lost. And you had some scriptures here. Matthew chapter 5, 43 through 45, God provides sun and the rain for the just and the unjust alike. Acts 14, 16 and 17. In past generations, he allowed all the nations to walk in their own ways. James 1:17, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. And I think sometimes when we think about common grace that everybody can experience, that God has made available, I think, one of my favorites for illustrating that is your first one, that God causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust. I think we really struggle with that as a humanity of how could this person experience blessing when, humanly speaking, they seem like such a terrible person. Like they deserve judgment. They deserve God's wrath to fall on them. And then you watch and it doesn't. And you've got someone over here that really loves the Lord and is living faithful for the Lord, and they just got a serious diagnosis of cancer. Mm-hmm. And you're going, well, how is that fair?
Yeah.
And I think that's where this common grace kind of fits in the sense that God has a grace that is kind of over all of his creation, and it's impartial in that sense that I tell people all the time, you use the cancer illustration, cancer really doesn't know any favorites. Like it doesn't pick one person or the other. Mm. And so even when you were telling that story, Dwell, I see common grace. Like that guy, more than likely not a Christian, deserved the worst of what you had to offer that day. But because you were sick, let's be honest here. Which one of us is getting in a fight with Dwell? No, I'm not. I think I'll pass on that day. I think I'll let someone else take up that. And then to offer him the opportunity after you've thrown up all over the place, you're expended in your energy. You didn't feel good to begin the day. This guy's got drugs and just wants to resist. And then even the offer to say, hey, man, you can either quit or I can shoot you. Like even that is an extension of grace.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have to warn him, I would assume, as a police officer. And so what are some other areas, or you other guys, what are some ways that we see common grace play out in the raising of kids, or in marriage, or as a police officer, or as pastors? Where are other areas that common grace plays out that might help people to understand how God's sovereignty really extends over everything, even if you're not saved, and how you can experience God's grace but still not have salvation.
Well, it makes me think of Asaph, Psalm 73, when he's kind of sees the people who don't follow God, and yet Asaph is a choir leader and a leader in, God's people. And he sees people, and they're like, these people are fat, they're happy, they're laughing because they're drunk all the time, and yet things are going well for them. And yet he looks at his life, and he's like, I'm starving, I'm sick, life is hard. And so he sees that like disparity, and like, why are these people getting it so well, and yet I'm not, and I'm following the Lord.
Right.
And in the Psalm, there's a turning point when he goes to the sanctuary to worship. Then he sees the end to those people. He sees the end and their destruction, and then he sees his glory forever with Jesus. And so I think, personally, I can see people who are not following the Lord and living for the world entirely, and it seems like they're doing great. Yeah. They got money, they got everything they need, but yet we have an eternal perspective when we see that grace will soon end, and judgment will come for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a kind of a scary thing to think about for them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how did you balance in law enforcement? How did you balance when to give grace and when not to give grace? Because we're not talking about salvation grace there. We're just talking about how did you make that decision? I know some of those were split second, but what are some of the things that went through your brain?
So I realized early on that there was a good chance or a decent chance that I would have to take a life in law enforcement. And so I grappled with that, and I realized that I have to answer to God for everything I do. And so that plays into every decision I made. I remember an incident where a guy, he was shooting at me, and I got my rifle out, and he was shooting. He had a .45 caliber and a slow moving round, and so I could actually hear the rounds as they hit the leaves above my head. I mean, it was close. And I finally got a situation where he had 2 rifles and a pistol and a box of ammo, and he was running into the woods, and I had him in the sight of my rifle, and I'm getting ready to take him out. And I'm thinking, if he gets into the woods, he's going to be a problem for somebody. He's going to kill somebody. And so I'm taking the slack out of the trigger, literally, and he slips on the grass that he's running on. He's going up a slight incline. And as he slips, he turns and he faces me, and he's got his hands full of weapons and ammo. And at that point, he surrenders. Now, from a legal perspective, he's bought and paid for. I can shoot him at any time because he's a threat. But I have to answer to God. And so that grace that I extend to him is common to all man, because I know I have to answer to God for my actions. And I didn't shoot him, and he surrendered, and it worked out pretty good. So for me, to answer that question, I think every decision I filter through my faith.
Amen.
I have to answer to God for this. Am I justified in doing this? And that did save a few lives, honestly, through the years.
Wow. It's amazing how even in that situation, and I think it's true for all of us, how that guy, and I don't know how his story played out, but that guy could live the rest of his life and not even realize the grace he was extended that day. That's the thing about common grace is everyone gets it.
That's right.
But not everybody understands it.
That's right.
Like some people just take advantage of it. Like I hope that man realizes that not only your grace was on him that day, but God's grace was on him ultimately through you. And to think of how every single day we all get to experience that, but how for granted we take that, we're really good, I think, at the next level, move to, God's saving grace. I think as Christians, we're really good at understanding God's saving grace, but I think sometimes we take for granted things like that, where it's like God had grace on us, and I don't even know we recognize he had grace on us.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means he has a plan for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It's great.
Zach, you got anything on common grace?
No, I think that it might just be helpful. We're kind of going to the next section there anyway, is like just a good working definition of what grace is. Like when you're trying to explain grace, maybe like to your children or your grandchildren, what's a good, like, just definition you guys give for grace?
I tell my kids that grace is getting what you don't deserve, and mercy is God not giving you what you do deserve. And so grace is God extending to you.
Yeah.
and mercy is God withholding from you.
Withholding. That's good.
So grace comes to you. God's mercy holds back from you.
Yeah.
So you deserve wrath, God withholds it. You deserve judgment, God gives grace.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the distinction. It's not a perfect working definition.
Sure.
In the Bible. Doesn't always work that way.
That's right.
But usually in the Bible, you'll see kind of that distinction of, as a Christian, grace is extended. So we have salvation.
Right.
And so he's given us something we don't deserve. But because we're like Paul in Romans 9 and we still wrestle with our flesh and we still sin, there are times when we still deserve God's hammer. Yeah. And he holds back. And I tell my kids that's mercy. And so that even in my parenting, I'll explain to my kids that grace, I'm giving you something you don't deserve right now.
That's right.
And at other times I'll go, right now you're getting mercy because you deserve for me to bring the hammer down on you. Yeah. And I'm not. I'm withholding it.
Yeah, we use that language too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Even in moments as a parent, when you're giving grace, it's helpful for them to see, like, this is, God gives me grace, so I'm going to give you grace kind of idea. I would say undeserved favor was kind of like the simplest terms. Yeah. Undeserved favor or merit, but for me.
So what about saving grace? Which is interesting because, Dwell, you put Webster's dictionary in your notes here. Unmerited divine assistance given to humans for their regeneration and sanctification. A virtue coming from God, a state of sanctification enjoyed through divine assistance. And so we transition from common grace that everybody gets to a grace that is only received in salvation, in the sense of you giving your life to Jesus, surrendering to his death, burial, and resurrection, repenting of your sin, and trusting in him. Dwell, what does it look like? So you do a man class with your boys, and so your grandsons, and so that's from ages.
The youngest right now is 8.
8, and how's the oldest?
He'll be 13 this week.
And so what does it look like in the way you're working with them? How do you teach them God's saving grace? Like how does that play out in that man class? Is there
absolutely?
What does that look like?
Yeah, we talk a lot about that. So I actually made a note here real quick if I could read it to you.
Yeah, you can.
So this is it. The final word on salvation through grace. Salvation's been offered and given freely by God to everyone who believes in faith that Jesus died to endure the penalty of their sins and was then resurrected. Because God cannot endure injustice, he justified us by sending his son to pay the price in our place.
Amen.
So that's what I teach those guys. We don't deserve it. Yeah. We have no reason to expect it, but God does it. The AI definition for salvific grace is unconditional favor and benevolence towards people who are unworthy. It's a gift that's freely given, that it cannot be earned. But what it's important is that we understand it's freely given, but the gift wasn't free.
Yeah,
that's right. That's
good.
We didn't pay the price. Sin always has a cost, and somebody has to pay it. And for our salvation, Christ paid that.
Amen.
That's right.
That's good.
Yeah, which I think is true, and especially like sticking with that the kids illustration. That's easy with kids because as they grow up, they have to learn that everything costs something.
Yep.
Kids always think things are free. Like, Walker is he broke his RC car, and so the
sad
little
day.
Yeah, the little whatever they're called that attach to the wheels. I don't know anything about this car, but he broke them, and there's parts that can fix it. And so he come to me and he said, "Dad, I need a new RC car." And I said, "You're not getting a new RC car. The one you got, we can buy parts." I said, "But you broke it, so you're paying to fix it." And he said, "Okay." So he goes up to his bedroom and he comes back downstairs with $2. And he goes, "All right, Dad, will you order the new parts?" And I said, "Walker, it's $53 for the kit to fix your RC car. So that's how much it cost."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Okay." He goes up to his room and he comes down and he's got $32.
Wow.
So he brought all of his money down. Walker's very good at saving his money. He's got his own penny bank. So he brings all of his cash, gives it to me. And gives it to me, says, "Dad, is this enough money?" And I said, "No, you're still $20-some short. You're about $20 short." And so he goes back up to his room and he gets all of his change, which probably would be enough.
Yeah.
But I don't let him spend that money. And so I said, "No, you need to put that back in your room. You're saving your pennies. That's for something else." I said, so you're going to have to figure out how to come up with your other $20. So he's learning that, hopefully I'm teaching him that it costs something to run this RC car.
Yeah.
And if you do dumb things with it, then you get dumb results. Play dumb games, get dumb prizes.
That's right.
And so hopefully learning that it costs something. It's not just free to have these parts. I said, so you're going to have to figure out how to come up with those $20, and I'm not ordering this. Kid walks in the living room. His mother's laying on the couch. She goes, Mom, can I borrow $20?
You know.
Smart kid.
And I gave him $20.
Of course she did.
Came back in there and said,
Got it.
Dad, we ordered my parts. I got all the money to fix my RC car.
That's good.
The only thing that would make that better is she took the 20 out of your wallet.
Oh, yeah. Robert, can you go get $20 for me so I can give it to this kid? And so I think, especially with kids, it becomes easier for them to understand that grace comes to us freely, but the cost was something. Like it was the cost, you're right, Dwell, it was the life of Christ. Like the Son of God had to come and live a perfect life and give his life on a cross so that we might be forgiven of our sin. And just like Walker is going to have to pay a price if he wants his car to be fixed, someone had to pay a price for us to get forgiveness of sin. And so, saving grace. Zach, you got anything else?
Yeah,
you got 10,000 questions over there.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we can fire away all day with questions. Because Christ had to die for us, I think it's just another good reference point of, man, were we really that bad? Right? I think even you had that written, Dwell. Were we really that bad? And I mean, we were. Right, we know that. We read back in Genesis when Adam and Eve first sinned, and then just how that has spiraled since then. I mean, we invent ways to be creative with how we sin. It's very clear that we do that even to today, and needed Jesus's love and his grace and his sacrifice that he gave for us very freely. So it's always just that tension, right? Of like, man, we are that bad, and coming to understanding with that. That's why grace is needed. So how do we approach God with that then? Like, what does that look like, you think?
I think when I started, I asked actually 3 questions, which are really one question. But I asked myself, why did we need Jesus to die for us? Are we really that bad? And then I said, why is grace needed? Because when we're dealing with other people, grace is just given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will you forgive me? Sure. And so we try to personify God. Why isn't God like us? Why can't he just let that go? Why does he have to, why does that have to be held? But I think, first of all, I realized that in our imperfection, it's easier us to forgive others because we are imperfect. Right. God has never, ever stood in the need of forgiveness.
Yeah,
that's a good
he
point.
Has always been perfect. But I think it goes beyond that. God's divine, and he is perfect, and we try to personify him and make him like us so we can understand him. But I think we have to start with the premise that we can't understand him. He's so far beyond us. He's unique. It's just impossible for us to comprehend his divine nature. And we try to do that with our human intellect. It's kind of like trying to understand eternity. We can understand the concept of it, but we can't really understand the practical aspect of it. Eternally large, eternally small. And I think God is far more complicated than the concept of eternity.
Amen.
So we try to personify him, and we just can't do that. And we try to, inquire with our curiosities. What could this mean? What could that mean? And he's not going to submit to our curiosities or our understandings. He's just not. He's just beyond us.
Amen.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. Yep. Good thoughts, 12. Great thoughts.
All right, so we have here some things that go into grace that can help on a practical level for someone when you're thinking about, especially if you're a Christian that's thinking about grace in your own life and you're thinking about, why does it matter? How does it help me? How can I trust it? Why does it matter who God is in relation to grace? How does that change in terms of the grace that we give as humans versus the grace that God gives? And so when we think about the fact that God is immutable, and so if you're listening, you're like, what does it mean for God to be immutable? It just means he doesn't change. God's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. There's no change in the sense of his divine nature, his divine character, his divine goodness. So all the attributes that make up God, those things never change. Different conversation for another day in terms of,
Sure.
Conversations like, when Abraham's pleading for God not to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and the Bible tells us that God changed his mind. We can talk about that on a different day, but even in that change that took place in that passage of Scripture, it wasn't God actually changing who he is.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so Malachi 3:6, his plans do not change. His promises are written in stone. And so, why is it important that God not be changing when it comes to grace? Because, like, for us as parents, Walker or Tony or Jaden may do the same thing wrong 2 days in a row, but because I do change, they may get 2 different punishments. And so how does that play out in terms of God and his grace that he doesn't change? Why is that so important when it comes to the grace of God?
I think the thing about that is it gives us confidence because he makes a lot of promises to us.
Yeah.
And he tells us what he's going to do and what his nature is, and that doesn't change. If you think about, we try to personify God a lot of times, and we think, he's going to mature, he's going to change his mind. If you are considering the creator of the universe, he is already as mature as he's going to get because he's perfect. He's not going to get any more adult-like. He is the ultimate entity, and there will be no maturing, and what he says will not change.
Yeah.
There's no, so we can rely on him. When he says that we have salvation, we have salvation. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. But it also means that his character doesn't change. And there are certain aspects of his character that will never change, and I think that plays a big role into why we need to be justified before him. We can't be accepted in our current state, in our sinful state. We cannot, in our own power, ever get to a point where we can be accepted by God. It has to come through Christ.
That's good.
And I think that's why immutability is so important. It's because we can understand little aspects of his nature and that they don't change.
That is good. That's good. When we think about God being self-sufficient, Drew, when you got married, so when we opened up, you told your story about giving your wife some ugly, hideous picture for.
I did.
It was Valentine's Day, right?
Christmas.
Yep. And then proposed 2 days later.
Yeah, a few days later. Yep.
Yeah. So would you say that when you married Liz, how long you been married?
9 years this year.
9 years. Has Liz contributed to who you are today? Like, has she changed you? Has she made you better or worse? It's for richer, poor, for worse. It's both ends.
Yes.
We're all human. So would you say that you are a different person today having been married to Liz than if you had never married her?
Absolutely.
Do you have any just quick off the top of your head ways that you would go, this is some areas where I definitely am different because I'm married to her?
Oh, yeah. If I wasn't married, I'd be a slob. Let me just tell you.
Yeah.
So, just nasty. And so.
Like your beard.
Sure.
Got it.
Yeah, got it. I like to live a cluttered life, and my wife.
I've seen your car.
Yeah.
Like, my car's cluttered. Bad. You make my car look
clean. It is
clean.
the only,
Robert's was clean.
When my wife sees my car, she's like, oh, college Drew. College Drew's back.
He never left.
There's a different persona, of college Drew. It's like my car, and it's not good. I'm not saying it's good, but it's a reality.
Yeah.
And anyway, I would say some organization, some structure to my life. She's made me be more compassionate and more, if I can say the word, sensitive around such masculine, strong dudes.
I know you're talking about Robert and Dwell.
Yeah, right. You guys.
You can buy drugs.
I can buy drugs. Take that.
But all those things definitely made me better in those categories, to name a few.
So John 5:26 says, so the Father has life in himself, so he has granted the Son to have life in himself. God doesn't need us, which makes grace all the more precious to us. Why is it so important that God is not like that? That God doesn't change in relation to us. Like, he wasn't, like, you needed Liz to be some of those things in your life. You needed her to spur in you maybe some organizational skills or whatever it might be. Why is it important when it comes to grace that God is not that way? That he is self-sufficient, that we don't really add anything. We don't make him better. We don't make him worse. We don't. Yeah. Why does that matter? Why is that important for grace?
Well, we don't bring anything to the table.
No.
we bring absolutely nothing to the table, which means that God's not reliant or dependent upon us, which I don't know about you, but that is a relief. you know, can you imagine God being reliant on us? That would not
like
go
if you
well.
had some kind of an impact on
Yeah,
him.
if you had some sort of impact on him.
Trying to imagine if God were bald.
Gosh, you know he has luscious hair. You know it's luscious. But for God to be reliant on us, it wouldn't make him God. It would make him a cheap knockoff. You know, like it can't be reliant on us, which means that there's nothing I can bring to the table. There's nothing that I can offer him, which is why the grace is so much more valuable and so much more precious, is because he gives it so freely and so willingly, but it does come with a cost.
I think we frame this. I think we frame this as Christians in a way that makes us look good. So I've oftentimes heard people say, like, "Well, you know, I'm glad I could help the Lord out today." Like, you do something good, and people frame it as though they've done something that has helped God. Like,
Don't worry, God,
no.
I got you.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
But the
Picked up
problem,
the slack.
yeah.
the theological problem with the self-sufficiency part is, if God were in such a way that you could somehow improve upon him, like that you could be doing something helps God in some way that he needed my help to get this done, as though he could not get it done himself, then it automatically means that the inverse must also be true. So if on one end I can somehow positively impact God, it would then mean I could then negatively impact him.
That's right.
So if I can add to the character of God, it would then by definition mean that I could also take away from. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you no longer have God. At that point, it would mean that humanity, if given enough time and organization and unity, could eliminate God. Because if on one end I could somehow make him better, I could add to he wasn't self-sufficient, he depended upon me, then that would also mean that I could negatively impact him.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why I asked the positive and the negative, because when we get married, the reality is I brought some things into Hannah's life that have made her better, but I've also brought things into her life that made her worse.
That's right.
Like, we don't like that. Like, I want to think that I've only brought good things into my wife's life, but that's not true. Mm-hmm. And Hannah has in ways made me better, but because we're fallen, sinful human beings, there are ways that she's also made me worse. Like, that's just the way human nature works. We always just want to view it as making better. The problem is we then attach that to God, because we're not real about it in other aspects of our life.
Yeah.
We're not real about it with God either. But if that's how God works, then to Dwell's point earlier, he no longer exists. He no longer is God. We've taken him off his throne. So I think that, self-sufficiency when it comes to God's grace, if he's not self-sufficient, if God is dependent upon anyone else to make up who he is, then now grace itself is dependent upon who humanity is, rather than dependent upon who God is. Because ultimately, if God's not so self-sufficient, he's dependent upon us. And if he's dependent upon us, then we set the standard and the foundation. So it all falls apart. Yeah. So that's really good, Dwell, that you had that in there. God is just. And just give me the most practical definition you're ever going to hear on God being just, and that is God is fair. Like, God always does what's fair.
That's right.
And not fair like, Gen C, soccer league, everybody gets a trophy fair. I'm talking about actual fair. Like, you get what you deserve fair. Mm-hmm. That kind of fair. Whether that's good or that's bad, God is fair in his appropriation of what he gives to you. He's fair. Why does that matter when it comes to grace? Why does it matter that God's fair?
Well, it's not that he's fair. He's fair all the time. 100% of the time, he's always right. He's always fair in how he treats us with the justice and the grace that's offered. Why it matters, right?
What would happen if God wasn't fair when it comes to grace?
If he wasn't fair, if you kind of pick and choose?
Yeah, if you're not fair.
Oh, gosh. Then there'd be no morale. Like, we
Who's the
wouldn't know
most
what was
unfair
right.
person you ever met in your life?
Oh, gosh.
Did you play basketball?
Oh, yeah.
Were refs fair?
Never.
Why?
They liked the other team better, clearly. I had that face they just didn't like. That's all refs. All refs are going against my team.
But would it be possible for a ref? So the NFL, here's a good example.
Yeah.
The NFL this year, just made a new league-wide rule.
Yeah. Does it for Patrick Mahomes? It's probably
It's for Josh Allen.
Oh, okay. Oh,
and
yeah.
it's actually for the Buffalo Bills.
That's
This is
true.
2 years in a row they've made a new rule because of the Buffalo
That is
Bills.
a fair rule.
The spotting of the ball in the AFC Championship game. There's a big debate over it. Everybody, all the Bills fans think that he got the first down. All the Chiefs fans don't think he got the first down.
Clearly got the first down.
If you're a Chiefs fan, I'm a Broncos fan, so it didn't work out for you either way. You got smoked in the Super Bowl.
Tell him.
So the NFL voted that they are going to use electronic devices to spot the ball this year
I think that's great.
because it's fair.
Yeah.
It's not being left up to the subjectivity of a line judge making
That's
a
right.
call and then having a video that may or may not have the right angle and
Sure.
all those types of things and geometry and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
So now there's just a chip in the ball. So when it goes to a certain place, they can exactly locate where it's at.
That's right.
And so I think when it comes to fairness and humanity, fair for us is relative to what I want.
Right.
Like that's why in basketball, it really doesn't matter if you're fouled or not.
That's right.
You want the call because it benefits you.
Benefits us and go to the free throw line. I can make more shots.
Imagine if God worked that way.
Oh, it'd be terrible.
Yeah, so justice is not always what we want, especially
That's
with
right.
God, because we don't deserve very good treatment.
Yeah. Because I want as little justice in my life as possible, but I want a lot of justice in other people's lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah. God, take care of their sin, but please give grace for mine.
Yeah.
Rules
Hey,
for
if you
thee,
could just
not
kinda,
for me, kind of
You
idea.
know, turn your eyes away from what I'm doing and focus on everyone else's. That'd be great.
Well, we're not even very good at this. I imagine if we were to do, Dwell, you're a good example. You've got 10 grandkids, you said. I would imagine if we waited until, and Dwell's not there, but Dwell, when you're 80, so in another 30 years.
I hope I make it.
30 years, Dwell's 80, right? And we do an interview of his kids and his grandkids. I would almost bet you, and it's going to be true for us three also, I would almost bet you if you asked all of them the exact same questions on how hard was Dwell, what did discipline look like, what did grace look like, how strict was he, these things, depending on the timeline, you're going to get different answers. Because to Dwell's point earlier, that God is immutable, God's not changing.
That's right.
Yeah.
We are. And so the longer I live, the more wisdom I get, the more mature I get. I actually am probably a better parent now it's different in the stronghold household because we adopted children, but if you have naturally born children, logically, if you're growing in the Lord the way you should be, your justice for your youngest child will be the best. It should be, because you should be growing spiritually.
Yeah.
Your wisdom should be growing. Your walk with the Lord should be growing. And so what looks like grace and fairness and justice and immutability, all those things that God's building into us, looks best with the youngest. But with God, the way he treated Adam and Eve in the garden and the way he treats us today are the exact same.
Yeah.
6,500 years go by, and his dealings with humanity don't change one bit.
Right.
It's not like his grace looks different today than it did back then, but that's not true for us. I think that's one of the reasons this grace is so hard for us to understand.
Yeah.
Never changing. It's good.
All right.
Thoughts?
Last section we're going to look at is cheap grace, which it's actually a word that you hear a lot. It's Dietrich Bonhoeffer is kind of the person who first coined the phrase cheap grace. And, of course, if you don't know the Bonhoeffer story, that's coming during World War, Hitler's rise to power, and Christians are being heavily persecuted, being killed for their faith. And Dietrich is writing his book on discipleship and also trying to participate and curb the tide of the war. And in the midst of that, he's talking about the importance of Christians staying firm in their faith, and that even in the face of persecution, they would not give up their faith.
Yeah.
But yet how we've given out, you just have grace, faith. Anybody can have faith. Anybody can have grace, and it doesn't cost you anything, and it's not worth anything, and it doesn't require anything of you. You can just have grace, and your life doesn't have to change, and you don't have to defend the gospel, and you don't have to die for the gospel. You don't have to suffer for the gospel. You don't have to, sins that you were doing, you don't have to stop doing. And so he coined this term that we oftentimes use now as cheap grace. It's a grace that is really kind of just empty. And so, Dwell, you've got here, Paul writes extensively that we are saved by grace and not of our works. We can't do any work to be good enough to get to heaven. It requires grace. Matthew 7, 21, 23, Jesus said, on the day of his return, many of you will say, Lord, Lord, we did all these works for you, according to their works and not their relationship with Jesus. Jesus will say, depart from me, for I never knew you. Why is it important that we not hang our eternity on a cheap grace that's not worth anything?
I think it seems to be a conflict between Paul and James, because James writes that faith without works is dead. And then he writes in another place, first chapter, I think it's verse 15, it says, desire leads to temptation. Mm-hmm. Temptation leads to sin. And sin, when it's fully matured, leads to death. And it's not talking about a physical death there.
Spiritual death.
So it's talking about a spiritual death. And so it seems to be a conflict, because James is saying, he is appear to be saying that you got to have some works there. And Paul is saying, no, it's just all faith, all faith. And if you read Romans, I read a book that you're writing, share just a small piece of that, not to give too much. But it talked about how Martin Luther, in reading the 17th verse of the first chapter of Romans, came to the conclusion that we're saved by faith. It's all about from faith to faith. And so that started the Protestant Reformation right there, and gave him confidence. Yeah. So he could sleep at nights not worrying about dying with sin on his docket. So I borrowed that from you. Thank you. Mm-hmm. But so I think the conflict there is, Paul talks about faith, James talks about works. And I asked a grandson of mine, he's my oldest grandson, he's really sharp. And I said, with salvation, are there going to be works? Are works necessary? And he said, no. And then he was very thoughtful, and he said, and yes. And I thought, this guy's pretty smart, because he's got something figured out that a lot of Christians struggle with. And so what I came to in the end was that God is more interested in who you are than in what you do. But in being the person that you're supposed to be in Christ, there will be doing.
That's right.
Good goal.
And if there isn't doing, we need to inspect that. In fact, if you're reading 2 Corinthians 3:5, it talks about that we're supposed to inspect ourselves, to look at ourselves,
yes,
and see if there's something going on. And if there's not, then we may not be in faith like we think we are.
Right.
If you're living because a lot of people will come to Christ and there's no change in their life. Nothing happens. Is that how it's supposed to be?
Yeah. No. Ephesians 2 is I've created you in Christ Jesus for good works. And so it's exactly that idea of you're saved by faith, no work of your own, that no man may boast, right. But you are saved for the purpose of living according to that grace. Yeah. And so I think that cheap part is, a lot of people are okay with the first half. Like, yes, I want to go to heaven. Yes, I don't want to burn in hell. Yeah. I will take grace.
Fire insurance.
What do you mean I can't sleep with my girlfriend before I'm married? What do you mean I can't do drugs anymore? What do you mean I can't drink all the beer I want to drink? What do you mean I can't have a foul mouth? Oh, well, no, I want the grace, but I don't want to do that. That's cheap grace. That's saying I'm okay with the Paul, not so much with the James. And I think the Bible's like, well, Paul's talking about up to your salvation, and James is talking about after your salvation.
Salvation requires a heart change. It's not about just knowing information, because James also writes that even the demons believe.
Yeah.
But yet they tremble in fear because belief isn't enough.
That's right.
And if you look at the thief on the cross, he had no good works, none. Yeah. And yet Christ said to him, this day you will be with me in paradise. Now I believe 100% that if he had survived that day, he would have been a changed man.
Oh, yes.
He would have been a different person. But then Jesus also said, to the folks doing all these works, when he returns, he's going to say, depart from me, I never knew you, but they've got all these works. So, and you can go to the rich man who said he followed all the 10 Commandments, lived this righteous life, never sinned, And Jesus, sensing that there was something else there, said, well, then sell all your belongings, because Jesus knew his heart. And he walked away with his head down, because his value was in his belongings and not in that relationship with Christ. So God can see our hearts.
Amen.
He knows what's there. So it's not about the works, it's about our heart.
That's right. That's good, Dwell.
Love that. It's great, man.
So grace, pretty important.
Grace, very important.
Should we start singing? Grace, grace, God's grace. And we shouldn't do that.
Nope, that's pretty good. I think that's pretty good. Stop the podcast. I think we
okay.
ought to just close her up right there. For Drew makes a bigger mistake than giving a ugly picture to his
mustache photo.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
it's good.
At least you got to give.
I can make copies.
Liz, thanks for a perfect illustration of grace.
Good.
All right. Close out.
All right. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast of the Faith Unfiltered, please subscribe down below. Hit that button. And thanks for joining us today.
See you next week.
Thanks,
See
Dwell.
ya.
Good having you
Glad
on.
to be here.
Yeah.